Hi you guys, how's everyone doing? I don't know about you guys, but I am already bored of just being in my house, so that's why we're sitting down and filming this video. This is actually something that was requested a while back. I put out a poll on Instagram and I asked kind of like, what are some things that you would want to see? Like, what do you have questions on? And I think it was my mom that actually requested it first, and then I got a few other people that said a similar thing, and it was sort of talking about how to use specific makeup brushes, like the best brushes for certain things slash my favorite makeup brushes. So that's what we're gonna film today. And before I start, I just want to say, like, there's really no right or wrong way to use a makeup brush. You can make anything work for most things. A lot of my brushes are named one thing and I will use them for something completely different. So I'm gonna share like sort of my favorite brushes and how I use them, and then talk about some other ones too that I like, or some things that I think like will be really handy to have as well. And I'm gonna do my makeup along with it so you guys can see, you know, how they actually work, and if you do something similar, if it would work for you. So we're gonna dive right in, and I'm gonna go in with primer first. This is by Revlon. This is their Perfecting and Smoothing Primer. I also wanna say, don't underestimate your hands as a tool. I think a lot of times we get caught up thinking like, I have to have a brush to do certain things, when in reality, like, your fingers can do just as good of a job for some things. So for primer, I normally only use my hands. A lot of time for certain eyeshadow steps, I will use my hands. So don't discount what you already got. That's the primer. And then we're gonna go into cream bronzer. So if you've watched any of my other videos, this cream bronzer is nothing new to the channel. This is the Huda bronzer, and I really, really like it as a first step. But there's a couple different tools that I will typically use with it. First, this is by Real Techniques. This is the foundation blender. Essentially, this is just a very thick kabuki brush, and so anything that is thick is going to blend out product really well. I really like this for this type of application, but every now and then I will also use a tool that you've also heard me talk on here a few times. This is the Tati Beauty Blendiful. This does beautiful with creams and all that kind of stuff. And this is sort of similar to a beauty blender where you can sort of do just about anything with this. I really, really like these and highly recommend. But one of my favorite things to use it for is cream bronzer. So Real Techniques you can get at the drugstore. Super affordable, super easy to get your hands on. The Tati Beauty is a little bit more of a unique tool. And not as easy to get a hold of, but her site is great. Everything ships super fast. Like, I've had no problems, and I've ordered multiple different times from her site, so I think either one is a good tool to have on hand. A brush like this is also great if you do any sort of body makeup, so like you're going out for an event and you want to cover up like some veins on your legs, something like that, this would be great. So my first step is always a really messy contour with the cream bronzer, just to lay down some color on my skin. We'll go in with concealer, and this is the concealer by Winky Lux. I did a video recently trying out this whole brand, and this is one of my standout products from that. I really, really like it. This again is another thing. Most of the times I will start with my hands first. Clean hands, of course, especially with all the gunk that's going around. But the warmth from your finger just does the best job getting a natural blend. So a lot of times I'll start with my finger and then I'll go back in with another tool to blend it out. So today I'm using the EcoTools sponge. Any beauty sponge is great. Find your preference on what you like. There's a bunch of different types of sponges out there. Some are more dense, some are very squishy, some are small, some are big, some have flat sides like this, some are completely round, some have different hourglass type shapes. You can really find anything that you like, and you can find them at a variety of price ranges. So Don't feel like you have to get one kind of sponge, you know, like try a couple different ones, see what you like. This one's great, it's $6, you can get it at Target. It's big, but also has a variety of different shapes, so you can do different things. That's why I'm really liking this one right now. Another thing, if I wasn't using a sponge or I didn't want to wet a sponge, I would use a brush like this to blend out my concealer, and this is also by Real Techniques. This is technically their contour brush, but for me, this is like a multi-purpose, do whatever I want with it brush. The bristles are just really, really nice on here, so I'll use this for just about anything. I'll blend out concealer. I'll do a full face of foundation with this if I'm in a pinch. I can contour with it, highlight, under eye powder like this. If you're like, I just want to add one brush to my collection that can do a lot of things, this is the brush. I believe I have 3 of them in my collection. I can only find one other one right now, but I have a lot of these because I use them so frequently and I use them for different things. This is actually an older version of the brush and it's just a little bit more tapered, but I really like both of them. So if you get it now, it'll look a little more like this, but both are great. I use them so often. Let's talk foundation and different ways to apply it. Today I'm using the Maybelline Dream Radiant Foundation and I'm just applying it actually straight to the sponge. I think foundation is also totally up to you on your personal preference. Depending on what tool you use is totally going to depend on what you want the finish to be, what you want the coverage level to be. Your tool can affect a lot of different things. So a lot of times I really, really like using a sponge. Again, this is the EcoTools sponge because beauty sponges help to sheer out the coverage just a little bit. It's not going to make it look super, super sheer. You can get a very full coverage look with the sponge, but it's a lot easier to get a nice flat coverage, and it's not going to look cakey anywhere because you're adding a bit of moisture. So sometimes my skin can get dry and flaky in certain patches, and using a sponge sort of helps the product to sit better. You're gonna see a theme here, which is that I really, really like Real Techniques brushes. They're super affordable, they're great quality, and they were some of the first makeup brushes that I ever purchased, and I still have a majority of my original brushes that I purchased. Like this is one of the original ones, I believe. So this is the Expert Face Brush from Real Techniques. This is another one of those do whatever you want with it. This is great. It is a little more dense, so it is so good for foundation, but you could also do cream, blush, bronzer, anything. You could powder with this. It can do a lot. I also like this BBCC brush from them. Like it says, it's great for like those more like liquidy things, and it has a flat angle to it, so it like really presses up against your face and kind of gets into all those like weird spaces because you've got different length hairs to get there. So I really like both of those. Then I also like this brush a lot. This is by Morphe and Jaclyn Hill. This is the JH03. Regardless of how you feel about Jaclyn Hill or Morphe, this is a great brush. It is really densely packed, but it still moves. I love this for my Milk foundation stick. It just blends foundation really, really nicely. We're gonna move to eyes now, and I'm actually gonna reach into a palette that I haven't used for a little while, but this is the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. Another thing where I'm like, just use your finger. Eyeshadow primer, anything that comes in a pot. You can use a brush, but if I'm in a hurry, like I'm just not going to. Okay, so let's talk about some of my favorite type of eyeshadow brushes. Again, this is another one from Real Techniques. This is so handy. You can do a lot with this. This is a base shadow brush. What I love about this is the actual shape. So you sort of get the shape of like a packed brush, but it also tapers, and it's just got all these different angles, so I could really do my whole eye with something like this. And the barrel of it's really skinny, so it's like really easy to hold, but you can very easily get in your crease. You can turn it on its side to pack. You can also like do different angles to just get specific parts of the eyes. I really, really like that. This is another one of my favorite eye brushes. This is by Sonia Kashuk. This is a brand from Target as well. She used to make makeup, but now it's only brushes at Target. I don't know whatever happened with that, but this is the blending crease brush, and this is just like a dream crease brush. It's a pretty traditional shape. It's basically just a round tapered brush, but if you're doing eyeshadow, this fluffs color into the crease so nicely. I love that. We're gonna go ahead and just start doing the eyes, and I'll kind of just talk through the brushes that I'm using like as I'm going. I'm gonna start with the shade Morning. So if you noticed, I've sort of turned it and flipped the angles depending on like what I'm doing. When I start in the crease, I have it like this, or when I start on that outer corner, I sort of have it flat. And then when I move to the crease, I turned it so that I'm getting a different angle and different bristles. You just have so much control with this brush, but also if you like don't care and like you're not trying to be precise or anything, you're gonna get a nice coverage no matter what you do with this. So like it's great for experts. I say experts, but like anyone who wants to get a little more detailed, or it's great for beginners because it's gonna do a lot of the work for you. Okay, another thing about eye brushes or brushes in general is don't be afraid to use the same brush for multiple things. So I'm dipping into this color Morgan here, same brush. I'm gonna use this one brush probably for a majority of my eye look. I'll probably use a couple more because we're specifically talking about brushes, but if I wanted to, I could do the whole thing. I should say using one brush for a look is totally fine, but we also need to talk about cleaning your brushes, because using one brush to do a look one day or a couple days, fine. Using one brush to do every look for an entire month or a year, not so fine. You need to be cleaning your brushes. Even if you have 2 makeup brushes total, clean those brushes, because your eyes are super sensitive. You only get one pair of eyes, so you want to be safe. You want to like stop the spread of any harmful bacteria, especially with all the stuff we have going on. You know, like this stuff is directly touching your face, so be smart, clean your brushes, don't wait. For the next step, we're just going to use our handy dandy finger. Anytime I'm working with metallic eyeshadows, I prefer to use my finger. I just think it applies better. You fluff less glitter everywhere. Again, keep your hands clean while you're doing your makeup and they'll be one of your best tools. I'm gonna go into the shade Laurel, which is this one up here. It's sort of like a pinky orangey. And I'm just gonna pat that onto the lid. And if you're someone who's not comfortable with using your fingers, totally fine. A brush like this, like a flat packing brush, is going to be great for applying metallic or any other color to the lid. I really like brushes like this. This I don't have like a specific favorite. I have all different shapes and sizes, so you can get bigger ones, you can get ones that are a little more fluffy. It just depends. It's not a bad idea to get a variety of different shapes and sizes if you feel like you're going to be using them like pretty often. I want to take a little bit of the shade Agate, and same thing going in on my finger. I'm just gonna apply that. That's really pretty. We are going to take 2 fun brushes and do something a little bit interesting on the lower lash line. Nothing too crazy, but the other brush I have, both of these by the way are the Morphe and Jaclyn Hill collection. This is the JH40 and this is the JH42. So this is a tiny little paddle like flat brush. But I really like this for either highlighting up here on the brows, inner corners, or fluffing color underneath. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take the shade Morgan and we're gonna start. I'm packing it just on the tip. I'm not necessarily going in flat. I'm dipping in like this. It's another thing with brushes. Where you put the color depends on where it's going to go on your face. And I'm just gonna lightly bring this underneath the eye. The next thing I'm going to do is just go in with a little more concealer just to brighten up the under eyes again and to clean up the sort of shadowing that we did underneath. Nothing crazy. This is the Hourglass Vanish Concealer. I really like this stuff. And this Again, I want to go straight in with my finger on the inner corner because I personally deal with a lot of creasing and different things. So I try to use as little amount of brushes right in my inner corner because that's where I feel like I get streaks. But where I bring in the brush or the sponge is more down low to blend it in with the rest of my face, or as like a last sort of step to like really finish everything off and just lightly go over it. We're gonna go into powder next. This is the Winky Lux Diamond Powder. This is a pressed powder. I've really been liking this on my under eyes, and this is like my favorite under eye type powder brush. This is the JH7 from Morphe and Jaclyn Hill. I didn't even realize how many of these brushes that I really liked, but it's a good brush set. Morphe has great brushes. They're fairly affordable, and these are pretty like unique shapes. So this is more of a tapered powder brush, and it just does such a good job of like getting underneath your eye and getting into those like crease areas. All right, we just have a couple more things to finish up, and I need to like get out the door. So I'm gonna try and do this semi quickly. But let's go to bronzer. I have one brush that I love for bronzer. No matter what the bronzer is, this is my favorite brush. This is a Sephora brush, and basically I just like big, thick powder brushes so I can go kind of quickly. But the one exception to that is recently I've been loving this Revlon Skin Lights bronzer, and for some reason I started picking up this brush. So this is more of an angled brush, but I just really like it with this bronzer specifically. I'm gonna use this little palette from Urban Decay. I really like this like deep red blush in the middle. For blush, like any sort of angled brush. I don't know why, but it's what I've always gravitated towards for blush. Does not matter the brand, like does not matter really like the denseness of the bristles. I just like an angled brush like this. But you can use whatever you want. So I have like 4 different brands in different like sort of like thicknesses, but they all have basically this shape. We're gonna finish the face with highlight. This is by Ofra. This is the collaboration with Nikki Tutorials, and this brush is like my ideal highlight brush. I like sort of a smaller brush, pretty loosely packed, and like this shape, more of a rounded shape. I've tried the fan brushes. I just don't like them that much. I've tried a few other like types of brushes, and this is what I always come back to as being just like my favorite. It works the best. I have a few different versions of this as well. Let's see. This one's from Target. I have a different, this is one of my favorites. This is from Morphe, the E8. So you can get very similar shaped brushes at different price ranges. And you guys will know too, I don't really have any like high-end brushes. I don't spend a ton of money on them because I think you can get really good ones at the drugstore now. Like Real Techniques is probably my favorite brand of brush. That and Morphe. I guess over the years I've collected a lot more Morphe brushes, but both are super affordable. Alright you guys, that's pretty much it. That was me talking through like my favorite brushes while doing my makeup. I'm gonna round out sort of talking about the brushes that I think like if you're looking to add like 1 or 2 pieces that you might not have that can do a lot, these are my suggestions. If you don't have a beauty sponge and you've never tried one, you gotta get on it. They just do everything. Super handy to have. If you have not tried sort of a velour puff like this Tati Beauty one, these are great. Like this is such a cool tool. I have nothing else like this. I actually bought 2 of them and I'm so happy that I did because I love these. You can tell this is very well loved. Both sides are dirty. I need to wash it. This is super beginner friendly too because you can do your whole face with this product. Powders, creams, doesn't matter. This will put it on. This is so good for putting on primer too. I don't know, I'm obsessed with this. I've talked about it a lot on the channel, so it's not that new, but I do think it's a great tool that can do a lot. Another brush. This is the Real Techniques contour brush. This is the one I talked about. I know it's called a contour brush, but you really don't have to pay attention to the labels on the brushes. This does so much. And then like my last suggestion would be just a good crease brush. This is my favorite one from Sonia Kashuk, but you can get any sort of one this shape. This does a lot, even though this is just a traditional round shape. You can do so much with this that it really does change your eye game if you don't have a brush like this. It's super helpful. But yeah, those would be like my top recommendations for brushes that maybe if you don't have something like them in your collection, check them out, try them out. The great thing about makeup and brushes in general is like there's no one set way to use anything. So I might use a brush one way and you might be like, oh my gosh, that's not at all how I use that. Like I use it in a completely different way, and that's totally fine. I'm just sharing like how I've made things work for me. I'm gonna stop rambling now and we're gonna go. But thank you guys as always for hanging out and watching these videos. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll be back again very soon.